scalability is from the root word scale, which means to be capable of doing, much more. If you are doing something that's, had an aggregate of 10, you can now do 20, you can do 50, you can do 100. Now for payment systems, this is like transactions. So it means that your system can process much more without punking out, right? Or much more without falling down the stairs. Everybody that is here looks like they are all Nigerians, and they know what happened at the beginning of 2023 when banking systems and financial systems were not available because of the surge in digital transactions, and only few were able to maintain processing even with the increased load. And that immediately speaks to scalability. One of the things I like to speak about scalability is that you have horizontal scalability and you have vertical scalability. So I like explaining things in very easy terms, so that people can, understand very quickly. If you were somebody, that used to lift a 25 kg bag of rice, and all of a sudden you are now required to lift a 50 kg bag of rice. If you are fintech, two options are presented to you. It's either that you want to go and build a mass muscle in the gym, and because you have that muscle, you can now lift a 50 kg bag of rice, or you get two other people, and then you put the bag of rice across everybody, and here we are 3 now, and we can now lift the bag of rice together. So building muscle to lift a bag of rice, refers to vertical scalability. So it's the same person, but added capacity. So more RAM, more memory, more disk, maybe upgrading the CPU of a specific server so you can do more transactions. Or you get more people to lift the bag of rice. So you get more servers, and then you balance that load across them so that they can now process more. If scalability is talking about doing more of the same kind of thing, so more transactions, adaptability is talking about your ability to do different varieties, right? To morph into different things. That's what it's talking about. So for payments, you're looking at, I used to process ISO transactions before, right? Or card-based transactions before. Now I want to quickly adjust my system to be able to do account-based transactions, or to be able to do blockchain transactions, right? Or to be able to do mobile money transactions. So let's say, for example, M-Pesa says, want to scale, and Nigeria is looking like an interesting market. We've been looking at them for a very long time. And then we want to enter the Nigerian market, to be a payment method in Nigeria. Adaptability for fintech systems will be, who are the few fintechs that their systems are immediately ready to start supporting M-Pesa transactions, right? Who are the systems that can immediately adapt the requirements of processing M-Pesa? And the need for being adaptable speaks to itself already, right? It means that you're innovation ready. There are some banks that have more capacity than other banks, but because of how unadaptable their systems have been, all this new innovation, they can't take charge of it, even though they're spending billions on technology, because the systems are just there. Like, to touch it, you will need, the last developer that touched it is 60 years old somewhere else in another part of the world, and nobody touches that code. If not, it will break. So make it just day, as you day. So yeah, that speaks to adaptability. When you're looking at payments, it's divided into various parts. And this is me putting on my, as I was preparing for this talk, and the nights I spent sleeping in various data centers to make sure that banks are up and running. So you have a couple of things to look at. The first is the server. So all payment systems sit on a server. They don't, sit in the sky, even if they're in the cloud, they sit on a server. And then you also have the app server itself. So the server I'm talking about is the hardware server, the infrastructure that it sits on. It will be sitting on a device. So that's the first thing you need to look at when you're looking at scalability. And then you look at the app server, you look at the database server, you look at the network, and then you look at other things like your integration to third parties. So for scalability, you're asking yourself, how much more can this server, that I have, this disk space I have, this memory I have, this CPU and its architecture. Sometimes the problem with processing more transactions is not, we need more RAM, things are slow, we need more RAM. It's not like that. There's a kind of CPU architecture you have, no matter the RAM you add, it's not going to work, because even though you have 32 gig, it's not able to see the 32 gig, right? Because it's limited to see, very small. That's number one. Number two, there was a problem that happened in one of the places I consulted recently, and we were looking for what the problem was. And we discovered that the database, the data type that we're using to store data in the database was a limitation. So no matter what happened, it could only take so much. I forget what the database is now and the data type is, but if you have developers on the call, they'll quickly know that there are some data types that only take a particular range in SQL, and you have to increase it, or change it for it to be able to take more. So those are the kind of factors that speak to scalability. Another thing that speaks to scalability is your network. So yes, you've invested in servers, you've invested in the good memory and all that. Do you have a backup, or do you have only one? And the backup, is it top of range? There are providers that you use in Nigeria right now. And of course, I'm not mentioning names, and you just know that, it's an accident waiting to happen, but they are cheap. So everybody uses them as either the first or the failover, right? And if you want to go for the best, you have to pay more. So these are all the things you look at in your ability to process more transactions. Now, there's something else which I also encountered a lot in my days as a deployment engineer. Anytime a system goes down sporadically, right, especially during peak time, everybody will say, hey, it's the data, it's the server, and the memory, right? And then there's this time I told the bank, you need to just change this thing. Like, it's not working. You bought the server 5 years ago. Your transactions have increased since then. So change it. And then they made the hard decision to buy one of the BMW servers that we were selling in the company I worked with at that time. And then they bought the server, installed it, migrated data, everything. Same problem. They almost told me that day. And then we now recognize that the application was not using memory well, right? So there's also this thing about coding applications for them to use memory well. I don't know how much time I have, but if you are coding an application that handles transaction processing, it's going to be different from coding an application that has data at rest. So for database management, there are two concepts. That one is the OLTP concept. So you have online transaction processing. And another is an OLAP concept, or something you see with data farms, and where you have a lot of data at rest, like the kind of thing ChatGPT uses. So it's called an OLAP database. It's an online analytical processing database. Those ones don't need a lot of memory to do what they need to do. And what differentiates, if I would use that term, baby developers from seasoned developers or even software architects, is not just writing a code that works, but being able to allocate applications, to memory and make sure that they are used well in things like in concepts like threading, and all that. And so all these things contribute to, the key factors that concern scalability. Going from what I said earlier, about the factors that affect scalability, I would like to draw back from being very technical and go business, because really business drives technical outcomes, right? So we need to look at what the business need, first of all, is. So I'll speak again specifically just to ensure that, I'm talking about payment scenarios or fintech scenarios. You need to first of all understand the business that you're in. I know there is a bias to go very techy and just be concerned about, is the server up, is it this one working, is it that one working, and allow the business people to worry about the business things. But as people that are either founding a business or being employees in a particular business, one of the most important things you need to be worried about is how your business makes money, because ultimately it will come back to affect you in one way or the other, or the other. You're not immune from how your business makes money. So let's take a typical business. Like I'll just use two main businesses: merchant acquiring, or the merchant service providers. what you're concerned about is the volume of transactions per merchant. If your merchants all do one of their transactions with you a day versus doing 100,000 of their transactions with you a day, there's going to be a difference in your business. It will, make you a startup versus a unicorn or a unicorn, right? Same thing with card issuance, right? If your customers can fund their transactions and fund their wallets or fund their accounts from your app that gives out cards, and it reflects immediately compared to some fintechs that you fund with them, and in 3 days you're begging for your money to appear, right? It affects, it affects business. So you need to be aware of what the metric, the north metric, the main aim of your business is, and then you work backwards. So basically, for most fintech businesses, right, transactions are key, whether it's card transactions or whether it's merchant-based transactions, transactions are key. Then you need to look at how these transactions are being managed back end, because it affects a lot of things. There are various things I can speak about, right? But I think I would like to look at maybe three of them. So there's this concept called data minimization, right? For data minimization, what you're saying is that I only want to collect as little data that I need to make this transaction successful. So I'll give you an example of one of the places that we've seen data minimization. In banking, I'll always keep referring to banking because no matter how fintech we are, those transactions are going to a bank or going to a banking type kind of system to be authorized. So in banking, one of the things they've done is that they don't send card data to the core banking system. The core banking system is a system that ultimately says, yeah, if he has 10,000 Naira, she's doing a 5,000 Naira transaction. So give her access because we've removed the 5,000 Naira from her balance. It's a core banking that does, takes that decision. So what they do is that they've done data minimization. We don't need card data going all the way to the core banking. There's no use. We're not using to do anything. That data processing stops at the card management system. So if you look at the payload going from the card management system to the core banking, there's no card data there. A few banks do it, but I think they've learned their lesson the hard way, because all you find is your data growing astronomically, and it's useless, really. I'm not using it for anything. So back to the point, data minimization, collect only what you need. I know you want to be a data powerhouse, find another place to put the rest of the data, but really, for your processing systems, collect only what you need. The second thing also lends itself to a lot of the copy that we do in the industry. One of my friends that is a seasoned solution architect says sometimes you go to consult for people, you open their code and you're like, the signboard that I saw when I was entering inside here is Fintech. Why? But why is their code exactly like Fintech A? Like, it's the same code. So it's almost like people are copying code and transferring from one place to the other. Maybe when you put people, the transfer code, I don't know. But in that copying and transferring of code, you're transferring things that you don't need, but you don't know why they are there, but you just copied it and it's working. So let's just copy it from Fintech X, and change it to Fintech Y. If you copy data without knowing why you need it, right, you don't know also what you need to encrypt and what you don't need to encrypt. So encryption is the second thing I'll be speaking to. Why is this a problem? One of the reasons why encryption puts a load on your system is anytime you need to save data in an encrypted format, you need additional processing to save that data in the encrypted format. And if for any reason that data is needed, during processing, you also need to go and unencrypt it, read it, right, and then put it back encrypted. So all that thing, you don't know why the fintech did it in the first place. You don't know if it's useful. You don't know if it was because of some vulnerability they saw in 2009 that is no longer applicable in 2023 because we now have APIs and all the security around. You don't know. You just carry the thing and put there. And the thing is slowing down your system. And then e-payments is growing. So then if you had 500,000 transactions, everybody be like, yeah, we are doing well. Now 500 is like, are you okay? Do you want to move to the next level? Right. And you just copied all those processes, and you are going on with them. So the first thing, and let's speak especially in an African or a Nigerian context, but more, less Africa, because a lot of Nigerian fintechs are looking to go out. Everybody's going to Egypt, Rwanda, and Kenya. I was reading a report earlier this month, and it was talking about the fact that Africa has over 257 payment methods. Now we know that, and it's more than that really, but we know that payment method is the real thing, right? When we come to supporting or expanding our payment system. And I'll give you an example. So a few fintechs in 2023 expanded to Kenya, even though they are moving out now, but they expanded to Kenya. And if you expand to Kenya and you're like, yeah, our system supports Paga. It supports, I don't know what, it supports Wema virtual card. It's a virtual account. It supports whatever. All those things are immediately obsolete when you see welcome to Kenya. It is obsolete. You need to start looking at the Kenya market to find out what are the dominant payment methods there, and then you're looking for how to support them. So the first thing that you need to look at when you're designing your payment systems is having a modular architecture. So your architectural design is the first thing. I hesitated a little bit, when I wanted to say that, because I like looking at what you should do and what is realistic. Yeah, sometimes you can reel these things off in conversation. So there's real best practice and there's like street talk. Let's leave all these things we're talking about and face the reality. So I would like to address, those 2 points. So real talk or best practice, first of all, is that your systems should be modular. Modular, everybody here is familiar with Lego, and Lego is that you can put a lot of pieces together to form something that makes sense. And then when you don't like it, you can remove the hand of the robots and just put small hand, or, don't put the long hand, something like that. And it's still something that makes sense, right? And that's what modular architecture speaks to. But it also speaks to how you architect functionality, right? And when you're looking at the system design, you're also looking at microservices. Now, for real talk, life doesn't really happen like this. It happens like this at some point in your fintech journey. Real talk is that you really want to start getting users to use your system, or start getting investors to look at your system so that they can give you money. So nobody's trying to build one big fancy something. So it is okay to start with your MVP. Start with the cheapest, cheapest thing that works, and take it out to the markets, the first markets that you find yourself landing in. When you now want to expand, it's either expanding in that market that you are in. So you can start off, and you see many people start off like that. They start off with one payment method. They look around, what is the most dominant payment method we want to use? If you're wise, it's going to be cards. And so you start off, accepting cards, and then you start looking for how to accept other payment methods, as you go down until you are accepting Apple Pay and all those fancy things in Nigeria. Now, when you start accepting more payment methods, you start looking at designing your system in such a way that onboarding and the APIs and microservices around that are different, because onboarding might be different as you go across different payment methods in the same country, or as you go from one country to the other. When you look at regulations for QR, contactless, and agency banking, they're all different when you're looking at the requirements, right, for QIC. Yes, there's a thread running through them, but they're all different. When you go to Kenya and you're looking at onboarding, right, it's also going to be different. So you're going to say, what are the major things that I want to accept, major things for onboarding, whether you're looking at Stripe, whether you're looking at M-Pesa, whether you're looking at Paga or MoneyPoint or whatever it is. And you make sure that those are the ones that are not changing, but that you have the opportunity to change any of these other ones, right? Security and tokenization, most of the times doesn't change, especially if you're building with PCI in mind. PCI is a worldwide standard. So those kind of things, you don't hard code them into your system. You leave them on their own because you can always call them. So again, modular architecture. Modular architecture also speaks to the fact that when your systems are coming out, either after your MVP, being realistic here, after your MVP, when you're now building the one that you're building because somebody gave you dollars and you can hire, designer engineers and all that, you start building API-friendly an API-friendly architecture. So you build with APIs in mind, which also means the governance around APIs, the authentication, everything. Governance just covers everything around how to build, APIs. Another thing that I've seen in a lot of fintech systems, including the billion-dollar ones, is the lack of parameterization in building systems, right? And it's a little bit different from microservices or modular architecture and API. So I'll give you an example. Some people build systems and they hard code. So the ISO code for Naira is 556. Yeah, I think so. 556 or 560 is one of their both. They will hard code it inside the system, and it's almost like somebody quickly wanted to go live and the person hasn't put a parameter for currency, which means that when you lift that thing and you take it to Sierra Leone, all you need to do is to change currency and it works, right? Or you lift it and you take it to Cameroon, all you need to do is to change currency and it works. So you're looking at parameterizing currency, you're looking at parameterizing partnerships, so whoever your partners are. And you're looking at also parameterizing things like even the cards that are supported. The fact that you started with Visa card does not mean that it should be Visa card you had code everywhere. You're not going to do MasterCard. What if China Union Pay becomes a thing? What of Verve, right? So don't hard code things. Parameterize as much as possible that can adapt when new things come up. For me, the challenges are two broad ones, and from there we can start going into smaller categories. The first one is money. If you have money for all your lofty dreams, can you afford, what you have on your pitch deck and your PowerPoints? So it's money. And then the second one that is a big concern, especially when you're looking at building a system, not just talking about the system, is access to skill. So a lot of the things that we have, identified here tie themselves into the fact that you know how to code a system in the payments or fintech domain, not just that you have attended an online coding bootcamp and you're out into the field. Respect everybody that is starting out their career, but some of these things need some deeper thoughts than just coding applications or the back end. Then if you want to go deeper, there are also architectural decisions. There's a time in my life I used to think, maybe because we don't do things well in Nigeria. So it's a Nigerian problem that we're always looking for how to change architecture, that kind of thing. Until I saw a talk from Stripe, various sessions from Stripe, and they were talking about the same things we used to argue about in the software design rooms or places I've been with. So I'm like, so it's not just a black man problem, it's an Igbo problem too. Like everybody has that problem. And it was always this system, should we build another one from the scratch and build it how we understand systems to operate maximally now? Or should we continue to adjust this system that is running, right? And sometimes building a new system needs a new team, needs focus, needs pulling dangerous people that know how to code very well out of what they are doing, take them to some other place. Those things have found to work or not work, in different ways. So architectural decisions. How to manage your data. Data management is also a very key concern, as well. I spoke a little bit about that later. What kind of data are you dealing with? And one of the things I see for best practices that I don't know if people follow or not, but it's something to note, is how you archive data. And it's not just because it's a best practice for data. It also owes itself to how fintech works. So this is how fintech works. Fintech works in a way, this is how fintech works. We can do 100 transactions today and 20 of them failed. Of those 20 that fail, people will start shouting from today. Some people will shout tomorrow. Some people will shout 1 week down the line. Whenever somebody shouts 2 weeks down the line, you don't want to go to a system that is operating and start looking for data inside there. In data management, you should have a way of moving data out after a while to somewhere else, so that when people start flogging that database with queries, right, and different things, it doesn't have the processing of the current systems. And should be designed like that. You should know from the kind of data you collect, which of the fields in your payload grows the most, and how to handle that growth, especially things like state management and all that. There's no need to go into that complexity in this call, but data management is very key. Just to also put a note to, I know I may have been developers a lot, but again, it's a tech conversation. Some people focus on only knowing languages and knowing frameworks, but I find that people that differentiate themselves when they are building systems, payments or otherwise, are people that also know how to manage data, right, in the system that they are building. It's very important not to look away from data when you're developing your developer career. Another thing again is, we spoke about the build or buy decision. And when you're coding a system, build or buy decision is something that a lot of product managers are familiar with. This particular component I want, let's say you need to be able to do KYC for a lot of agents or merchants. So you need to be able to do second factor authentication, which is really just sending somebody a code securely so that the person pins in the code in the application so that apart from who they say they are, there's another thing to authenticate that they have the device, right? Some people say, what's this thing now? It's an easy, logic. It's true, it's easy. But do you want to quickly get from somebody that has API to put it in your system so you can quickly move to market? Or do you want to start coding your own? I don't know, maybe there are many developers and product managers on this call. You would know that at the start of building a new feature or a new solution, all of us will say, is it not easy? Is it not easy becomes from 2 weeks to 1 year, sometimes 3 years, we are still doing, is it not easy on top? So sometimes you want to quickly do a partnership with someone that's partner ready, APIs ready, all that to collect it. The problem with that, if you're not focused on your roadmap and your company strategy, is that you relax into that relationship. And one day they'll tell you, you're not even doing this back office, something. Well, we can do it, you give them the contract. We can do this other one, we give them the contract. We can solve, before you know it, you're doing 5 things with them. One day they will tell you, now our management said that we should change our Naira billing to FX billing because of our partner, something. All of a sudden, your currency has changed from Naira to dollar. Back then, the dollar is 182 Naira. It's not moving too much. Everybody's happy. Nigeria before. You wake up from sleep one day, and Naira has moved very quickly from 200 to 600 or the 900 and something it is this morning, and you are trapped. You're doing so much with them. You can't quickly remove yourself from that relationship. It's like a marriage that has too many layers on it, right? So it's called vendor locking, right? So that's the problem of vendor locking. The places I've seen vendor locking is really bad because when you want to be adaptable, yes, the system, when they were selling the system to you, they said it can do X, Y, and Z. You say, okay, well, I'm moving to Rwanda or I'm moving to South Africa, we're expanding and your system can do X. You are not using the X in Nigeria, but we need it for Rwanda. They're like, yeah. X needs so amount of money. Be like, what? No, the system I bought, it came with X. I said, no, that was before when we had this CEO. Now, if you're really serious about X, you're going to pay this money. Then the project is 6 months because we have 13 other things we have in the pipeline to do. Anybody that has worked with a payments processor in Nigeria will know this story so well. And they say they're not doing so. Vendor locking. So those are risks, right? Another risk again is uniform business user experience. So you want to develop one app and use the app across many localities or countries, like Tunde was speaking to. And then the developers in Nigeria said, you that, we'll run it here, right? We'll just do it here and we'll do context switching and, you will press something to enter Nigeria, press another thing to enter Sierra Leone, press another one to enter Ghana. We cannot run it from here. But you need somebody on ground in Kenya that would say, this is how we understand this, and this is how we understand that. So this your app is not ministering to us. So one example, in the earlier part of my career deploying systems, I worked a lot around Francophone Africa and East Africa. So it happened to me in East Africa and Francophone as well. What we thought, and we even did what we thought was okay. We went to the bank we were working for at that time and said, see all what the ATM and the POSs are supposed to say, translate it to French for us, translate it to Swahili for us. And then they translated it. I didn't go to Google Translate. I told, as we went through the normal process, you that knows how to speak Swahili and French, translate it for us. And now let us now put it in the ATM code for the screens or in the POS code. And we did. And of course, we went to the countries to run tests and everything. And someone told us, this thing is textbook French. It's not street French. This is not the way we understand it. And other people that have come here, they have 3 screens. You're only 7. Why? Nobody's going to use this ATM, right? And so we had to change those things on ground, on site. Thankfully, something we could do, from a back end. We didn't need to go and code to do it. So there's a problem with, ensuring uniform user experience, especially taking charge of local nuances, or context. There's a reason why KFC in Nigeria sells rice and beans. They didn't sell that rice and beans, they would have, they would have been down and out. That's their price and whatever it is. It was not making sense for us. We needed what we understand to be food. That's my Let's look at it from first principles, right? And define what growth means. So when we define what growth means, we'll now see what the bottlenecks or the challenges are. So growth means that your transactions have increased. You are processing 10,000 a day. Now it's now 100,000, or it's a couple of millions. Growth means that before you started out with one card product from one card scheme. Now you have a couple of card products from the same card scheme, or you have a couple of card schemes, or you have a variety of payment methods. Growth means that you used to process transactions in Naira before, but now you process transactions in Naira, in shillings, in CFA, right? And also growth means that before you were this very interesting smart fintech that would go to partner with banks and partner with other people that have APIs, but you've gotten money now, right? And then you have licensing and all the overhead that comes with licensing and compliance. So looking at the problems that come with all of this, it sort of speaks to themselves that for size of transactions, you're looking at how to maintain the same value proposition, the same service you've been giving people, even though transactions have increased. Fintechs have been seen not to do that. There's a fintech that was everybody's favorite at the beginning of the year. It took them very shocking 4 months, to just turn the other way. Very, very shocking. People were even rumoring that this person will buy them, the other person will buy them. Oh, they've done this, they've done that. It just unraveled itself and people are resigning. So you need to plan for that kind of growth, the size of your transactions. What I see is that people, and I don't think they do it intentionally, right? So they are documenting strategy. We entered from H1 to H2 and everybody's documenting strategy. I want to do X, Y, I want to do, ABC, all those things. But it's almost like when you say it, is that your direct reports, maybe if you're a CEO, your senior management or your middle management is not taking on, it's not distilling your strategy, right, from what you have said to what they need to do. So we want to grow to support the biggest merchants in Lagos. What does that mean for the team that you're running, right? So you need to look at all those things. What does it mean for our one server, or whatever it is we are doing with AWS right now? What do those things mean? So you need to start cascading what size or growth of transaction means. When you're looking at variety of payment methods, you're not necessarily looking, yes, maybe transactions will increase, but you're also looking at a variety of implementations. So you now need to look at things like partnership operations, perhaps even have somebody to manage that. So I'm mixing the bottleneck, or I'm highlighting bottleneck and then what you can use to address that. So first of all, you need to optimize, because at a point you might have 9 projects running, and maybe only 2 of those projects make sense, because only 2 of those projects that speak to the market needs. Some of them are just vanity. A lot of fintech have card products that are or specific card products, so it's not card in itself, but it's the type of card that they've chosen, because that type of card they've chosen is Forbes friendly, it's not street friendly, right? So you need to look at the kind of partnerships you're doing to optimize for the best, because if not, your team's productivity is scattered around 9 projects that do not make any sense. Maybe only one of them makes sense, and you should be putting all your effort on that one product or that one integration that makes sense. When you find out that you're doing a lot of integrations because your system is growing, payment methods are growing, you now need to have a governance around how you integrate. I have managed and I've managed systems that just allow any and everything. I started like that because we're quickly trying to answer everybody. there's a part of your growth, that is like that, because you're begging people, Dangote, please come and connect to us to do your B2B payments. Some other person come and connect to us. All the FCMGs, what are their name? Promasidor, all the people that do the chi juice and everything. All those Indomie people, come and connect to us. And then this one is saying, oh, my API is XY. My API is ADC. My API is 123. And you've collected all of them. So you have a system that in a very confused way supports AB, 1, 2, and even special characters. Like there's no standardization. At some point, you need to step back and have some governance around how you deal with partners. So you should have partner operations, right? Maybe from an architectural perspective, say, we're going to have a middle system where we manage individual complexities so that our system will remain sane, right? The system that we have at the back will remain sane. Again, it speaks to, that architecture design that we pointed out earlier. You're dealing with currency of transactions changing. We've mentioned the need not to parameterize, right? But there's another thing that we also need to mention as well. When you're dealing with currencies of transactions changing, and you also have the need to exchange from one to another, right? So before, your app only allows for me to transfer to Isaac and for Isaac to transfer to me. Now it has also supported that I can transfer to Isaac that is in Dubai, meaning that I'm transferring out dollar and I'm transferring to Tunde or to Choice that is in Egypt or Canada. It also means that before transfer happens, that I will need to call a system that informs me of the transfer rate at that point, right? So you're also looking at third-party integrations, that you would need to start putting in your system as well, as the transaction is growing. In the community that I run, as part of our insights and enabling a skilled environment in fintech, we have a community, right, of fintech people. And one of the questions they always ask once, in a while is, how come in the same Nigeria, fintech A, like OPay or Money Points, their transactions do not fail? Why? It looks like every other person else, that transactions fail. And they're optimizing for this connection to third parties. Some people get a license that has 13 things that it can offer, right? And they're not interested in that only 1 or 2 things of that license. So you see a fintech that has 5 licenses and you wonder, what are they doing with it? That's why their transaction is faster than people's own, because there's a way they can, wiggle around those 5 licenses to make life easy for the kind of transactions that they want to be able to adopt, so that they can grow and still have the same kind of success rates for the transactions, right? The last thing I mentioned is impact of regulations and then the overhead, of licensing. That's what you need to encounter as a system grows. And the way to manage that is to resource adequately, right? And make sure that you're also monitoring the things that you need to monitor. Recently, the regulations for data was changed from NDPR to NDPA, I think. And then, of course, they have a bureau that's managing that now. And so I was reading the report from, I think, the director that is in charge, and they were mentioning how, I think either last week or 2 weeks ago, they have penalized fintechs for a couple of things. I always say, when fintechs release a new product, it's out in the news, it's out on Twitter, it's out on LinkedIn, it's, in every single place. When they get funding, it's also out everywhere. When they penalize them, they don't tell us. It's only few people in the same company. You can even be in a company and you won't know about the penalties, but those things happen. So don't think that people are not penalized. Some products are operating at 0 because whatever you made has been collected by penalties. So the impact of regulations and the overhead of licensing is also something to think about. Now that we are a licensed processor, now that we are a licensed PSSP, now that we are a licensed super agent, how differently should we architect this thing? Cannot just collect somebody's data like that, or just send somebody to go and abuse somebody because they collected loan from you. All those things, that you just do anyhow before, when nobody could hold you because you had a license. You don't do them in the current regime you are in. The other things I need to mention that do not necessarily bind to all these points, and that is the use of automation. You use automation, to turbocharge your customer response. It's a way to manage growth.
because some human beings are not around at some points of the day, except you're running a 24/7 company and it has this attendant problem. So why not use technology, to cater to that? I think this company Ibanco has a lot to do with automation, using chatbots and all that for responses, for dispute resolutions as well. What some people also do to help the bottlenecks for growth is also to automatically, also speaks to automation, but it's different, automatically identify that something has happened. So GTB used that once to help with a lot of their problems until they had that resource issue they had, would brought them back to zero. If you're in GTB here, please forgive me. What they did was that if a transaction failed, their system will automatically, because your data points to know that the transaction has failed, right? You don't need to wait for Iphie to come and complain. You can collect it and put in maybe a table you've named suspects or suspicious. So immediately somebody complains, you're not checking all the system and wasting time. You maybe go there, maybe even put a copper there, right, to man that thing and to respond to it, because everything here is something that we have identified as something, that would have failed. And it makes your response time very fast, and all that. Another thing is, okay, I've spoken about a couple of them. Apart from the hardest decision to make to overcome a bottleneck is the very tough decision of, this system is no longer serving us. We built it 3 years ago when we raised 500K. Now we are a $40 million company. Should we trash it and build another one so that we stop having all these problems? I had a conversation with a security expert, I'm not one, that has worked in the payment system for a while. We had a session with him at the payment log, and so it's a lot of what he said, I'm going to be referencing in this part of the conversation. So I think the first thing to note is that payments has a layered security approach or perspective. And it's unlike a couple of other places, and I'll mention how. From physical security, so wherever it is you are doing your payments stuff, especially if your data center is in a physical location, you need to have physical security, access control, all those things. So from physical security to network security to application security, and then transaction security. And for me, I imagine that's the most important, right? You need to make sure that security, are in all these layers, and they are also scalable. So I'll give you an example. If you decide to code your own two-factor authentication, right, or multi-factor authentication, as the case may be, the difference between the drawback between that, and getting from a standard company is that for a standard company, you might be able to scale, as the company scales. And sometimes scalability just means support for partners. So a company is in all of Africa. And since factor authentication sometimes is delivered by SMS, right, it's per country, they've already integrated to the best partners in that country. So when you're moving, right, it's scalable. They can just move anywhere with you, right? So that's for stuff like two-factor authentication. Now, from the security from the data center security, if you are using cloud, right, one of the advantages of using cloud for some of your systems or services is that some of these cloud have native security services that just come, with them. They are building with security in mind. So if you're doing cloud, it already comes, native. For application security, you need to ensure, I think there's some feedback coming from somewhere. You need to ensure that you have role-based authentication, right? For each system. So somebody cannot, I'd be surprised how many companies don't have this. Some companies are 10 years old. They don't have what I'm talking about. Because I don't know. I really don't know why, honestly. But anybody can log into anything, right? I don't know whether to give an example of somewhere I've worked before, because somebody immediately said, it's either here or here. But there was this place, and then we found out that people we are logging in at odd hours. And then initially it was like, huh, this person works so hard. That's why, they're not allowing the server to rest. They're trying to do. Well, found that thing was fraudulent. And it was because the person didn't even log in with their own access control. It was admin, and admin had a password that everybody that was related to that project could use. And you'd be wondering why a company like that, had something like that, but it happens. So I've mentioned, all the security layers that we should look at. Yeah, I think apart from transaction security, I've mentioned the security layers, that we should look at. But for transaction security, another good reason why you should do data minimization for security purposes is if anything happens, and I'll just speak straight, if you're a gas, you don't have so much, like you don't have people's card details or people's account details or people's whatever it is when you don't need it. So the exposure is tinier if you're minimizing, data. I'll quickly go to how to balance. So I've looked at the kind of securities that available in a payment system. So how do you balance scaling these or balance security as you're scaling a system? Because the wider it goes, it's either the more porous it becomes or the harder it is to enforce security. So that's where the problem comes up. Roles are changing to suit some of all these things. So before, there was nothing like DevOps. Like you just had the engineering team, you had the operations team, and that was it. And then we now had DevOps, developer operations, right? And now it became a growing concern. If you're a fintech now, even a tech company, and don't have DevOps and you're scaling, it's like you're not serious. But like in the talk I had with somebody from me or InfoPriv, he also mentioned a role called Sec DevOps. So it's security DevOps, where there's a DevOps person, but the person is focused on security, saying all these plenty servers we are bringing up in different places or in different countries, are we also ensuring security? Yes, we want to quickly run to press and say that we are now live in X or live on Y, but are we also ensuring security, as we go along? That's what that role looks at. Sometimes the company does everything correctly, but the exposure is from a third party, right? So in your checklist of everything you're doing, as you're scaling and adding partners, you're also putting down, even using it as a checklist, right, to find out who you want to work with, right, for third parties. Their APIs, do they have best practices on those APIs? Can somebody hack you? Like somebody one day woke up, or a group of people woke up and hacked the whole of Kenya, right? By the whole of Kenya, I just mean the most important systems in Kenya all went down one day. And it's because, I'm sure all of them had maybe a particular provider that, gave the access, or they were all doing the same thing that was very funny. So check your third-party providers. Sometimes you're doing everything correctly, but somebody, that is external to you but connected to you is the one that will bring the virus to you. And then user education is something that you cannot skimp on. The more people know, like a lot of us, I'm sure on this call that maybe work with fintechs, we are aware of data because our compliance teams have done a lot of, NDPR, data privacy, data ownership, all those things. We now know those things compared to maybe like 6 years ago, depending on how long you've worked, because they've insisted on teaching us. They put deadlines, they put appraisal issues, and all of us have done those courses online. And then very important as well, do regular security assessments. You do scans, do penetration testing, no matter the number of instances you have, do all those things, especially after a major change. A major change can be a major migration. A major change can be a major feature. A feature has gone live. I think this is the last part. So just to tell you a story of stuff that normally happens in the product world. Sometimes a new product goes live, you've been testing, close user group, people in the company, 1 or 2 transactions, depending on how big you are, maybe even 10 or 15 transactions, and you're happy. And then you turn it on and it goes live. And all of a sudden, maybe even do an announcement, LinkedIn, whatever, WhatsApp status, transactions start flowing in. And the product manager is ecstatic. Oh my God, I've gone live. I'm made. It's time to go and do my own fintech. I've proven this thing well. Most of the time, half of those transactions, most of the time, is an attack. I don't know how it happens. People say it's internal. People say it's not internal. I don't know. But it looks like there is this, I don't know, secret part of the web that maybe something goes live. They're looking for vulnerabilities and how to, take advantage of those vulnerabilities. So I know the pressure to go live. Trust me, I've done dangerous things because I want to go live before the month ends or before the year ends so that we can all say, yeah, and pop the champagne. I know what it is. So I won't say, do not go live. I know you will not listen. You will go live, Sha. I know. I'm just saying that after you go live, after you've flipped the switch, done the deployment, sent that email that every product manager likes to send, we are now live in something, something, something. After you've done that, take a deep breath and go back and partner with whoever it is in your company that does your scans and let them do the scan so that all the back doors that you've opened because you are testing. And in fintech, you know how we test. We relax PIN, we relax this control, we relax this OTP, we relax a lot of things so that the transaction can move quickly, right? Without anything dropping everywhere. Go back to all those things you're relaxed and unrelax them so that your record can still be clean as somebody that has deployed a good product.